A lot of people aren't going to want to raise taxes, Richard, especially pointing to what we've been through with the pandemic. Would it be even more irresponsible to just freewheel all the spending and not raise taxes? That would even be worse. That would totally be. So you think we do need to raise taxes to pay for at least some of this?
Depends on in what form. Obviously, this is all being discussed right now. There seems to be a consensus, not simply with Joe Manchin, et cetera, the senator from Arizona, but the Democratic senator from Arizona, but also in the corporate community. As I talk to CFOs and CEOs around the country, listen carefully to what goes on in the board meetings that I sit in on, people are assuming a 25% corporate tax rate. The question is how you deal with the overseas matters and then other individual tax rates. We don't know what they're going to be proposing. It could be damaging if it ends up countering the impulse to create more jobs by squeezing margins. So they're going to have to be very, very careful on this front, and we'll see what comes out of the process. The good thing, Joe, they're going to take until this summer, I believe, to get this all squared away, and we'll see what actually comes out in the end. And they're going to have to make some changes to make this thing work. They'll have to do a little bit of both. The markets are a powerful force. If they go too far in terms of financing it, then, of course, you just pointed out the 10-year has come down to 166. The 30-year, by the way, is up. But the longer end of the yield curve will probably experience some pressure, and that'll put more pressure on financing government spending going forward.
What's your feeling on the transitory nature of inflation right now, and whether we can count on that? We've had Leisman talking about that. Just had Jim Paulson talking about it. Can pure money printing cause inflation, or if everybody's doing it, then relative to everybody else, maybe you don't get more than the rest of the world? Or do you need a wage price spiral for really to get out of control? What would cause the Volcker moment that Jamie Dimon talked about, and how wouldn't we see it coming since we're so low? I mean, once we get back to 3 or 4% on the 10-year.
Well, what creates inflation is excess demand relative to supply. You have to ramp up supply to meet growing demand. We're seeing a snapback in demand here as people go back to work. They have a job, they spend money. If they spend money, they consume. That drives the U.S. economy. It's a very simple equation. You got to have these supply kinks come out of the system. You have to be able to meet their demand. And if you don't equilibrate those two, you have inflationary pressure. So obviously, even Chairman Powell has said, for the short term, we expect those two linkages to be a little bit rough, and therefore we'll have an inflationary pressure. It'll be transitory. And if it's not transitory, we have the tools, as he said, to address it, which means they would wait to see if it's transitory. And the question is, if you wait and it proves out to be transitory but repetitive, then the question is, how do you respond? And are you responding too late? So the new model of monetary policy of waiting to, you see the whites of the eyes of inflationary pressure above the 2% target that is not transitory, you're taking a risk. On the other hand, they could well be right, and we'll just have to see what obtains here. For the short term, expect inflationary pressure here. And the question is, what does the market then discount? Transitory or more long-lasting or repetitive? And there still is, I think, a little bit of doubt in the marketplace about whether it could be transitory.
So
that's why the 10-year went to 175, and it settles back down, but it keeps pressing the envelope after settling in.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.